Mason, POV. Jerry took me home after we dropped Heather off. I informed him that Heather's mum would call in the morning to confirm if Heather had awoken. Jerry nodded, showing he had heard me, and a smile flickered quickly across his face. Jane had gently put her to bed, making her as comfortable as possible and tucking her in. Her gentle way with Heather was heartwarming to me. The look of love and concern on her face was like most mothers hovering over their young pup, but somehow that look meant so much more to me, and I put it down to being my mate she was covering. Heather must have overdone it. After having been in bed all day, I had never heard of such a reaction before, not with our wolf and fast healing. I intended to hunt through our library and see if I could find something about the wolf healing gift Jane was trying to tell me about, and why she only had this problem once before. If it was to do with the healing gift, surely she would have had previous issues. I feel deep down it was a reaction to whatever the lab technician used to wipe her arm with before jabbing her, and to do it 6 times is just so wrong. If once had caused a reaction in the past, with just one attempt, what did 6 times do to her? I will definitely be bringing up about how many times a person attempts to take blood, if this is the reaction you can get from it. Even Mum was horrified when she saw her arm covered in bruises. Entering my home, it was fairly quiet. No sounds of any kind, not even staff moving around. I assumed my brothers were still out clubbing, and my parents must be in bed already, though to have no staff around was unusual, unless Dad gave them all the night off, which he occasionally does, and my thoughts headed towards what Dad might be doing, and I quickly closed off that train of thought, not wanting to think of my mum and Dad might be doing right now. Deciding I needed answers, or I wouldn't fall asleep, I headed to the library to see if I could find a book or two on healing or wolf abilities. I know of a few really old history books that might have some clues. So much was lost to the wars over 100 years ago. Even some of our own personal library was damaged when the castle was overrun, for a short while, until the royals regrouped and took the castle back on the same day, but not before they had burned much of our beloved books and history. I pulled down one of the oldest books I knew we had in this private library and started reading through it. At first it was a hierarchy of the royals and lichen kings. What I found interesting was that the lichens were the ones that had the wolf healing, and we don't know if any of them are still alive. They disappeared right after the greatest war we have ever had. Putting back the pieces has been hard. Even after all these years, we are still hunting down the lost pack. Now, with the DNA testing, we might be able to put some packs back on the map and reunite lost families. Dad has high hopes of more discoveries, and the more I read this book, the more I am behind Dad with his idea. It is the gifted part that has me a little worried. If we find gifted people, what are the plans for them? Have we set any goals? So far, I have yet to hear an answer to that question, and I doubt Dad has not really thought that part through yet. When I finished that book, I pulled down an equally large old book and blew off the dust from it. The book was lying at the back of the top shelf, with others that seemed to have not been touched in a very long time. Slowly, I read each page, not wanting to miss a thing. But my eyes gradually started to get blurry, and I think I read the same passage a couple of times. A hand shaking me woke me up. I groggily looked up at my dad's concerned face, and I realized I had nodded off at the table. "Morning, son. Been here all night, I suppose?" Dad looked at the table of books I had before me, and frowned at the titles on the covers. "Yeah, must have dozed off." I looked down and noticed moisture on the table where my mouth had been, and realized I had dribbled. I quickly wiped my chin and lips and cleared my dry throat. "What are you hunting for, son?" Dad asked as he picked up one of the smaller books I had opened on the table and looked at the page I had left it open on. "Wolf healing. Heather has this ability and so does her mum, but it seems though she has extraordinary healing abilities, Her wolf and her could not get rid of the bruising on her arms, and I was wondering why. Jane thinks it is an allergic reaction to the stuff they used to wipe her arm before sticking the needle into her arm, because at each entry point it was purple. I wanted to find something of wolf gifts. I was not sure if I explained myself well enough. My brain was not yet functioning at its best. I reached over and grabbed the glass of water I had on the table and took a large swallow. "What have you found so far?" Dad flipped through one of the other books on the table as he asked me questions. It seems the royal lichens were the ones noted to have this gift. No other book referred to the gift being in any other kind of paranormal. I replied automatically, as if giving a report to Dad. "The lichens have been missing since the wars. Do you think maybe Jane and Heather are descendants of the royal lichens?" Dad poised the idea carefully. "I have not yet broached that subject with Heather. We are still learning about each other. I did not know how I felt about this." "Leave it with me. I can look into the family line on both sides. Do not seek them out for these questions yet." Dad flipped through the book a little longer and looked over at me. "Go have a shower and change, then join us for our breakfast time." This came over as more of an order than a suggestion, so I rose from my chair and gathered up the books and put them on a shelf to read later.
Empty. Disappointment ran through me as I racked my brain as to where to look next. "How about I sniff them out?" my wolf suggested in my head, and I internally groaned at not having thought of that myself. Sometimes I think my wolf is smarter than me. She often tells me she is, and it's times like this when I tend to agree with her. Sky came forward and sniffed the air. She soon had me turning around and heading down the hall to the offices of both the king and queen. I rolled my eyes internally. Of course they would be there. I stopped outside her door and knocked softly, still worried about being in trouble. "Enter?" the queen's voice rang out in her melody-like voice. It made me feel like she was in a good mood at the moment. Slowly, I opened the door and peered in. The queen and the usual ladies were seated on the sofa, having a coffee break by the look of it. I must have missed breakfast. "Heather, come, my dear. Have some coffee and cake with us and tell us how you are feeling." The queen ordered me inside the room, a bright smile on her face. The other ladies seemed to be in a good mood too. Closing the door softly behind me, I walked over to the ladies and bowed low and meekly, worried I was about to have my head given over to me on a proverbial platter. "Hey, none of that. You are among friends here. We don't need the formalities here. We are family. Come talk to us," Jacinta said, beckoning me to sit on the sofa, right next to her. Sitting beside Jacinta, Yvonne offered me a slice of cheesecake. And being my favorite cake, I could not resist taking it from me and having a soft smile and a thank you. "How did yesterday go? You went to an art exhibition, yes?" Sabrina asked as she poured me a coffee, and I could see she was very tired and very pregnant. Maybe a month to go at the most. She looked uncomfortable sitting on the sofa and serving me. She had large dark rings around her eyes, and I could tell sleep was not easy. The baby must be on her bladder, and it would not surprise me if she got up a number of times in the night to go, and then struggled to find a comfortable spot once back in bed. A common problem I have heard about a number of times when I have been around ladies who were expecting or who were giving advice to other expecting mothers, which turned me off wanting pups too soon. My brother's picture was amazing, I excitedly gushed and pulled out my phone to show them a picture I had taken of it. The group of ladies each took my phone and looked at the picture, each praising my brother's work and how proud I must be of him. "So you think the show is a hit?" Sabrina asked, handing me back my phone. The exhibition was full of people. The longer we stayed, the more people arrived. I think the alpha had to start holding people back, and a long line had started to form outside, with people waiting to get in. I was shocked when I saw how long the line was and the variety of people and ages. So yes, I believe it was a success. Even if the rest of the exhibition did not have as many people through the doors, this first day must have exceeded the anticipated total for the whole exhibition on just the first day. The alpha had his hands full, and I could not be prouder of how well it went for him and the pack in general. This was an open exhibition for all the surrounding pack members with no age barriers. Even the schools had their art classes make a special picture to be placed on the wall in a special section for schools. "What about after the show? Where did Mason take you?" Yvonne asked sweetly, and I wondered what these ladies had heard, and if it was bad. A nice French restaurant. Very lovely, great food," I replied, not giving too much away. "French? Nice. What did you eat?" Sabrina settled back onto the sofa, and I wondered if she would be able to get back out later. She seemed so out of sorts physically, though her tone of voice sounded okay. I had the chicken cordon bleu and cheesecake for dessert," I answered as quickly as I could as I looked at the rest of the cake on the table. "Oh, cheesecake your favorite?" Yvonne asked me, seeing me eye the rest of the cake. She gives me a smirk at catching me. "Yeah, it is, actually. Offer me cheesecake any time, day or night. I will have trouble resisting it." I laughed at them, and Yvonne put it to the test by offering me another slice, which I gladly took and sunk my fork into it, and groaned as I placed the morsel into my mouth, making the ladies chuckle as if they had gained something valuable. "We have our secret weapon now, ladies. She will be putty in our hands." Yvonne giggled as she too took another slice and made a similar groan of pleasure as I had, which had the others laughing at Yvonne's appreciation. "Did Mason gain any more weeks into his trial?" the Queen asked, leaning forward in her seat, looking at me with a soft, questioning gaze. I had heard she was eager to get him mated, so she could tick him properly off her list. "No," I answered sweetly. "No? Really? Are you sure?" The Queen laughed over the question, having her doubt about my answer. I stared at her for a moment, before deciding to tell her more. "I am sure, and well, actually, I stopped mid-sentence, watching the ladies with interest, and made all the ladies stop mid-chew to look at me expectantly. "Yes?" the Queen pushed, her eyes glued on me, waiting for me to continue my sentence. "He has one less week now." I giggled at the widening eyes of the ladies in shock. "What?" the Queen shouted rather loudly, and it made me jump at her sudden raised voice. "How?" Yvonne shouted at the same time. "Why did you take a week off?" Jacinta also asked at the same time. They all laughed at the absurdity of the questions they asked. "Nope, not revealing that one to you just yet. Just know he is intending to reduce the trial time as quickly as he can. He now has some rules he can work with. I chuckled at the ladies' sad faces as I realized I was not going to tell. Well, there is more than one way to find out, the Queen said, and the room roared with more laughter. And it was true. If not by Mason, the Queen just needed to know which place we ate at and she could ask them. Though I'm not sure if any of the staff were around when we negotiated the reduction.
Mason. POV. Dad and the other men were sitting waiting for me. I followed a staff member in as she wheeled a trolley full of food for breakfast. The smell of bacon and sausages had my stomach telling me it was time to put something in there, and I watched as the woman placed the plates on the table, one by one, and lastly, the coffee and cups. I sat on the sofa next to Dad, and David served the breakfast. It seemed they took it in turns to be the server, and one day it would be my turn to do it. They made it sound like an honor to be the one that gave us a plate of food, and though I did not understand the meaning behind what they were trying to convey, I enjoyed their company too much to question it deeper. So, Mason, Zoran tells us that you are looking for information about wolves that can heal. Is that right? David asked casually as he sat back with the plate on his lap and began eating. Yes, Heather and her mother have the wolf healing ability, I answered, looking at David with interest. What do you mean the wolf healing? Stephen asked, frowning as he did not follow what we were trying to say. Heather can heal other people. What do you mean? Like we do with our mates and share healing? Stephen was confused. Not really. From what she said, when her wolf heals another, a white glow forms on her hands, and it heals the person. Amazing. I have to read about that, Stephen said quietly, as he was remembering something and had not meant to say it out loud. Where did you read about this? Dad asked, now excited. In our private library. It was what the Lycan's hand did when they healed others, showing the bright glowing light, meaning the healing was happening. But it was only the royals that had that gift. Strange that Heather had that gift. She is not a Lycan or a royal. Stephen scratched his chin in thought, a faraway look in his eyes. Lycan has not been seen or heard from since the wars 1,000 years ago. If Heather was related somehow, she would have a very weak line, Dad said to the group as a whole, encouraging each of us to say what we had on our minds. Part of why I liked this morning's breakfast is that it gave us all a chance to say anything we liked, and none were judged on it, and they made me feel part of the group. Yes, her mother has the same gift, yet the others have no sign of it. Does the gift only go to the girls? Do the Lycan men have any special gifts too? I asked, not yet fully understanding how it seemed only the Lycans had the healing, and what are the other gifts? The books clearly did not show anyone other than Lycan descent having the gifts. Was this what the DNA testing was for? To find if anyone had Lycan in their DNA? Are we looking at bringing back the royal Lycan line? Could Heather and her mother come from that line? If the DNA testing shows Heather and Jane to both be of Lycan descent, what will that mean for them? I asked, worried what will become of my mate if she is. Will the people refuse her as part of our royal family? At the moment we have no idea, and I'm not sure if the researchers are even looking for that. I thought we were looking to find lost family lines and bring them back together. We lost a lot of packs back then, Dad says, and I wonder if any of them had really thought this DNA testing through. But is that not what the Lycans are? A lost family line? Stephen asked, confused by the circles our questions and answers were going. Maybe we need to look deeper into this research. Let's call in the head guy over at the laboratory and get him over here where we can question him about the researchers' directions for this testing, David suggested, and it seemed we were all in accord. So, Mason, how was yesterday? Did you and Heather manage to have a good day? No big mishaps? Stephen chuckled softly. Nope. Nothing that caused me to gain any more time on the trial. I did manage to get a week's reduction, though. I boasted and beamed at them as I watched their mouths drop open in shock. What? Well done, son. Keep that up and we will have you mated in no time, Dad said, and David laughed at Dad. What? It is true, David. If we can get Mason mated here, that is one less son our queen has to complain about, and I am all for a happy queen, Dad said, and this got Stephen to join in with the laughter, and I sat and watched Dad's face go red with embarrassment, and the other two men laughing harder, the deeper Dad's face turned red. I did not get the joke, but I was glad they were all happy. Did we have any new incidents with my brothers? I asked, interested to hear if they managed to stay out of the gossip. They were on the social network, and it seems Michael was with the twins again. Do you think Michael would like to take them as his choice of mates? Stephen answered, looking at the social page on his phone. We were finishing our little social meeting when Dad's phone rang. He answered and smiled, then frowned. Please, come now, and I will get my ladies come here to listen to your explanation. Dad spoke a little longer on the phone, then looked at me. That was a researcher. A few researchers will be coming here today to explain what they have been looking for and what they have found so far. The hairs on the back of my neck rose, and I had a dreaded feeling about this, and looked in shock at Dad.
Chapter 48. Heather POV. At first, the day went easily, and the ladies enjoyed each other's company. The group of ladies worked on paperwork from the security men, who were out bringing in some of the women who did not come when the directive of an unmated woman to visit the castle, just like I had done. Hopefully, one of these women will be one of the prince's mate, said the queen. She had worked tirelessly, having these women be tracked down and brought to the castle. Her determination to find her son's mates left me with the impression that she was hungry for pups to hold and to love, and seeing her sons be settled down. Then, after lunch, we headed to the king's office. Something about researchers coming to visit. I followed with the other ladies to the king's office and entered. There my mate was, seated with David and Stephen, and some other guys I did not know. Ladies, come in, be seated. The king pointed to some chairs for us to sit on, and I got a chill down my back as I took a seat and waited to hear what this was about. My mate stood up and came to sit beside me. I appreciated having him sit with me. He took my hand and held it in his as we waited for the queen and the other ladies to take their seats too. Ladies, thank you for joining us. I have asked these three men here to explain the research they have begun. When they took our DNA, they finished the DNA testing of our family, putting our family and those of our entourage as a priority. You may be thinking, why? I have no idea. These men have yet to explain. I have asked them to wait until we were all together, so I would not have to try and explain what they are telling us, when most of it, most likely, will make little sense to most of us, the king said, and then asked one of the men to begin. As I told your king, when I phoned him to ask him about a certain person that was a part of your group, we would like to question that person a little bit more and possibly have some more testing, the man began. Excuse me, would it not be better if you told us your names before filling us with information and questions? I asked, not liking how this meeting began. It was rude. My pardon, that was rude. I am Professor Jameson, head of the research department that's just opened. This is Professor Peterson, and this is Professor Higgins. The tall older man, who was sitting to the left of the man, had started the meeting without the introduction, and he introduced the rest of the men as I eyed them warily. "Thank you. I assume you already know who we are?" the Queen asked softly.
"Yes, Your Majesty, we do. My apologies for my esteemed colleague's bad manners. He was eager to explain and forgot."
The man I now know to be Professor Jameson apologized for the rude man, Professor Peterson. "Proceed," the Queen said, nodding at Professor Peterson.
"We have been looking at a number of different areas in the DNA that some of you are aware of, like our hunt for finding families and uniting them together. Since the wars, many alpha pups have been displaced, and we were hoping that using the DNA process, we could get the hierarchy to some normality. Many omegas may have alpha blood lines, and a noticeable improvement in the omega strength is proof of that. We understand that the wars were a long time ago and many packs have disappeared. With DNA, we can find some of those lost pack members and reunite them. Some land has been allocated if we do manage to find some." "That's all well and good, but we were told you were looking at other areas. What are they?"
Dad asked, looking skeptically at the man that had been talking.
"Your Majesty, we are looking for a lost lichen. We believed that the lichens are not actually lost, but hidden amongst us. It was rumored that one of the princesses had been kidnapped. We do not know what happened to that girl. It is believed she was integrated into our system and mated with an alpha, but we have no proof of that. However, we do know that the kidnapped princess had 3 children. The special gifts that this particular princess held could only be handed down to one daughter. Even if she manages to have 4 or 5 daughters, only one will carry the lichen gene. And that girl is a direct descendant of the lost princess. So she is actually the princess of the lichens." "Are you saying you found this girl?"
David asked, looking sternly at the man. He trembled a bit under David's gaze.
"Yes, we have found her."
Professor Jameson voiced his claim with excitement and a gleam in his eyes.
"Who are you saying is the lost princess?"
Mason asked. I could feel his hand go clammy and knew what he was thinking, as I was feeling the same way.
"The lost princess is your Heather. Her mother Jane carried the gene and her passed on to Heather."
Another professor jumped in on Professor Jameson, taking away his reveal, making Professor Jameson growl and look hard at the other professor. But it was too late to change who had said it. Just not what was said. Neither I or Mason liked his claim. "What? I am no lichen," I called out, shocked. My eyes widened, and a chill ran through my body.
"Yes, you are. Your mother's blood test shows a low level of lichen DNA, and I assume yours will be even less. Over the generations, I expected the bloodline to become less and less, but your DNA had come out stronger than ever, almost like you were born full lichen. And way beyond anyone's expectations. You are every bit the lichen princess we have been looking for."
"What does that mean?" Mason asked, holding me close to him.
"Oh, at the moment, nothing. Continue on as you were. I understand the 2 of you are mates, and have yet to mark and complete the mating process. Please hold off on marking or mating for now, until we contact you again. We need to report this to our seniors, and get orders. We just thought you should know first, as it's going to change a lot around not only here, but at the Lichen Palace too,"
Professor Jameson informed us. He did it in a way that was so matter-of-fact that I was not sure if I wanted to get up and hit him or burst into tears.
We are very excited to have found you, and we know our employer will be thrilled when they get the news. Until they advise us of our next step, we ask that you keep this information here in this room. Maybe put a higher level of security on your princess here,
Professor Peterson said, looking at me with admiration I did not feel I deserved. I already have 4 security men on me, I blurted out, angry at the thought of being further restricted.
Your Majesty, could you please have our princess moved into the castle? She would be better protected here than in her home, and it would be easier for us to come here and report than to her parents' home.
Hey, wait, hang on. What about my mom? Is she in any danger? I was starting to get very worked up about this.
Oh, no, she is in no danger. Her job is done. She birthed you. It's you we have to protect.
Professor Higgins sprouted back at me, as if I asked a dumb question. Heather, would you mind terribly moving in here? We can put you in the room next to Mason.
I am sure he would love to have you that close to him,
the Queen suggested. But it sounded more like a demand, and I bristled at being ordered to move in here. The King intercepted. He must see that I was barely holding on to my emotions.
Please, sweetheart, I would love to have you live here.
Mason put his arm around my shoulders and pulled me closer to him as he asked. And I caved at his pleading voice and begging eyes, and the tingling through my body, and my damn wolf dancing all around excitedly at being next to her mate, and the suggestions of what they could do being this close. For you, I answered, while I told my scandalized wolf to back off and give me a chance to process all of this.
We need to go to your parents' home and explain what's going on and to pack your things,
Mason said excitedly, having got my approval to move in with him. Well, into the castle, that is.
Mason, POV. Dad tried a few times to get more information out of these professors, but these guys had given and gained all the information they wanted to take or share with us, and now they would not discuss that matter any further. Dad had told them they had scammed us, and he was livid about their real reason for wanting the DNA information, something they had hounded Dad for permission to do for years, and now they had it. What was the future of the research now? Would they abandon the other werewolf communities now they had found who they were looking for? Can we get others to continue what they had started? Because we can see the benefits of finding the lost pack and getting family members back together. So many pups grew up never knowing their real family, having grown up in orphanages and the stigma that was attached to having grown up without knowing who your pack was and being an orphan. Heather was shaking in my arms as the meeting continued to discuss other people's DNA, and at least one of the lost pack alphas had been found, and some of his family and members. Not enough yet, but hopefully they would find more, and the pack could reform as they should. And they were very excited that they are getting some really good information. And by the end of the month, they would come forward with what they had found, and recommendations moving forward. Turns out the so-called gifts and abilities they said they were looking for were only to find Heather. They had no others to find, and that she seemed to have more than just the ability to heal others. But they would not give us more information than that yet either. They needed approval before they could elaborate on any lichen information or inform us who their bosses were. I wanted to torture the guys and get them to tell me more. But Dad must have picked up on my anger as he mind-linked me to leave it be for now and get Heather settled into her new room. But they still did not answer the question as to whether they would be the ones to see this through or have other researchers come and take over. Whilst we headed over to start packing her things and advising her parents of the changes, Mum would be getting the room cleaned and prepared for her arrival, and unbeknown to Heather, Mum was getting her some new clothes in styles she most likely would not like. And Mum was so excited to get another woman living in the castle. She was like a child in a candy store. I'm sure Heather is going to hate the things Mum is trying to do for her. The stress, sadness, and fear were the main feelings flowing out of Heather. While we sat in the car, Jerry kept looking at her in the mirror, picking up her emotions, though he had no idea why. Occasionally he looked at me and gave me a frown and a look that was asking what was up, but I could not reveal anything to him yet, and I felt bad we could not bring him into the loop. All I could do was shrug, and he nodded back, but that did not stop him from looking at Heather. At every possible moment, he could and still drive safely. Heather was a bag of nerves as we approached her home, and Jerry climbed out and rushed to her door. Jerry looked at her with concern, and Heather, seeing his look, gave him a warm hug. Jerry patted her on the back, but said nothing. You could see he was conflicted and very confused. Heather entered her home, and I saw her eyes glaze over briefly, and then head down a hallway I had never been before. She did not knock on the door, just opened and walked in. Her mother and father were in there working at different desks, with computers open before them. On our entry, they looked up at us, and her mum quickly shot out of her chair and rushed over to her. Looking her over as she arrived, pulling her into a hug and looking at me with questioning eyes over Heather's shoulder. "What is going on here?" Heather's dad asked, coming over to me and gaining my attention. "We are here to pack Heather's things. She is moving into the castle today," I replied softly. "What happened? Did you put her into a dangerous situation?" Dad growled at me. "Can we sit down for a moment and talk before you say something you may regret later?" I growled back just as firmly. I don't often use my royal power. I have not really needed to do so in the past, but I can overpower even the strongest alpha, if I had to. Heather moved out of her mother's hug and walked over to her father and gave him one too. They both looked at me with concern as Heather moved to the sofa and sat down. Then, looking at me, patted the seat next to her, for me to come and be by her side.
Chapter 50. Heather, POV. In the car, I could feel Jerry's concern coming off of him in waves, so I gave him a hug to assure him I was fine. So many changes in my life in such a short time. It was a little overwhelming. And I guess Jerry could feel my sadness and fear of the changes that was happening. All I wanted to do with my life was to one day take over Dad's place as Delta of the pack. Now I'm even further away from helping my family in the way that I dreamed of doing. Gone is the quieter life. Well, as quiet as a Delta of a pack could be. But it's a different type of pressure. My life feels like it's spiraling out of control, and I have no control over the direction it's taking anymore. More and more people are trying to take my choices away from me and telling me I have to do something other than what I wanted. With this new change, even Mason is going to be a part of that change. Whatever his plans were are now on hold, while some other power tells us what is expected of us. Poor Mason. I'm sure he did not sign up for this change. He could still reject me, go back to his playboy ways. It seemed to be an easier life for him. If he stayed with me, these unknown, powerful people were going to try and run our lives. He would be better off rejecting me. With that thought in my mind, I enter my home and mind link my parents. "Mom, Dad, are you home? I called out as calmly as I could.
In the office, dear.
Dad replied. I headed down the hallway to the office that my parents were in and pushed open the door without knocking. I could hear Mason following behind me. Mom and Dad looked up when I entered. Mom rushed over to me and pulled me in for a hug. I somehow managed not to burst into tears. Why is it when you see your mom, when things go to shit, all you want to do is cry in her arms? I remember as a kid when I fell and hurt myself. I did not cry or show that it hurt until I saw my mom. And then the tears would roll down my face and my mom would soothe my hurts. I felt like that young child again right now, and I needed her warm hugs and soothing words. I could feel my father's anger coming at me in waves. I looked over at him and pulled away from Mom, giving him a hug too. His anger reduced a little. I headed to the sofa in the corner and sat down, patting the chair for Mason to sit with me. I was going to need him next to me, to give me the confidence I didn't feel, to tell Mom and Dad what was going on, and hopefully he would remember some of what was said by the researchers, as I was too upset and shocked to take it all in, though I think I got enough to know that I was in some sort of trouble. I think you need to sit down for this, Mom, Dad, I said, and waited for them to sit down. Their faces looked concerned. They kept flicking their eyes over at Mason, giving him the evil eye. It's as if I said the wrong word, they would pounce on Mason and knock him to the ground.
Tell us, dear, what has you so upset?
Dad asked in a soft, gentle voice, the opposite of what I could see he wanted to do. I could see and feel he wanted to yell and scream and demand who hurt me. But he controlled himself and gently spoke to me, coaxing out the answers he so desperately needed. We had professors from the laboratory come today. They had some results come through, and they wished to discuss them and ask some questions. I started, and I saw my mom's face pale, as if she knew something she was not going to like was coming.
Is what they said the reason you are upset, my dear?
Dad asked. I ignored his question. Mom, do you know who our ancestors are? Your ancestors? I asked, watching her face and body to detect any sign of a lie.
Heather, dear, I can tell you that during the wars, whoever our ancestors were lost. We have no idea who they were. A girl about 8 years old became a part of the orphan pups, and she is the only one I know of in our family history. Mom looked lost at where I was going with this.
Do you know every member of the family since that girl? Mason asked.
Yes, it's in a book the first girl started.
Mom looked at me with confusion, not getting where this was going. Do the other cousins have the healing gift?
No, only one girl is gifted with it. It always comes from the mother who also had the gift. It doesn't matter how many children she has. Only one girl will have that gift. Mom answered as clearly as she could. This was all still so confusing to me. Mom, can you tell me more, like, how old was the first woman, when she died?
Oh, she was 800 years old. She died in a rogue raid. Her daughter, with the gift, was 700 when she died. My mother died when she was 900. Also a rogue attack. Who knows how long they would have lived if not attacked? Mom looked over at Dad to see how he was taking all of this news. Mom, how old are you? Mom looked at me before answering. 273. Does everyone live that long? No, sweetie. Only you will be in our family, except for me and your father, that is. I'm not sure about Mason's family line, but once he has made it to you, he will live alongside you until you die. He won't last long once you are gone. It's the way we werewolves who have the gift are. You will outlive all of your children, except the one you pass the gift on to. Sweetheart, what is all of this about? Dad asked solemnly. The professors lied to us about the real aim of the DNA testing. Though the king is working on making sure the research continues, the reason they were looking at the DNA was to find the family of the kidnapped lichen princess. She was taken, or wandered off, they can't be sure, and was never seen again. We all know that lichens disappeared after the last huge battle in the war. According to the history of that time, the lichens made one last push and killed the enemy, and then disappeared completely. No one knows what happened to them, or where they went. Mason informed them. They still did not quite follow where this was heading. Mom, we are the descendants of that lost princess. Or should I say, you are, and so am I. It seems that only girls born in the family line pass on the lichen DNA, and that's why you and I can heal. We both have the lichen bloodline. I say, and watch Mom frown and Dad growl. What does that mean exactly? Dad asked. We're not really sure yet, but Heather has to move into the castle for more protection. Apparently, she is the lichen the professors were looking for, and they're going to report their findings to their bosses and let us know what is expected of us. Or should I say Heather? Though the professors have acknowledged I am her mate. They've asked me not to mark her or mate her until they have discussed the findings with their bosses, whoever they are. Mason said, pulling me closer to him and holding me close. I was so glad he was there to inform my parents what was going on. I was too upset to say anything else. It is odd that only one gets to pass on the gene. What is the goddess doing? Mom murmurs softly. Yes. If that girl had died, would that mean the line dies with her? Or are there other lichens out there, and they're just trying to bring home the lost, like we are? Dad adds as he looks at us, almost reading that there is a lot more to come.